Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything Electric podcast, where today we've got a bit of a treat really, because Robert, Jack and myself are sitting down for a little chin wag, which actually doesn't happen that frequently. So we are delighted to probably share a bit of nonsense with you. We'll see where we go. But before we get to that, first of all, a very quick advert break.
Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney, and next up we're in Canada for Everything Electric Vancouver. And new for UK viewers, you can now buy a battery EV and much more at everythingelectric.store.
I mean, the thing is that because of the beauty of editing, we actually didn't need to pause.
No.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was waiting for the advert to finish.
We're all just politely waiting.
We have, I think we hear it in our minds in Farnborough, Vancouver, Sydney,
Melbourne, Sydney. Yeah.
Keep all of that in, George.
But hello, how are you both?
I'm very well. Yes.
Doing
all been
very well. Slightly, yeah. We had a big old week last week, didn't we? I'm sure we'll talk about what we've been up to. But many big sleeps were had over the weekend, ready to do it all again.
Yes, because what we're sort of referring to is that last week we filmed episode 1 of Zapheap Challenge, our first
Zapheap.
pilot.
Might be just Zapheap. Yeah.
Zapheap. Episode 1 of Zapheap. We started the day at, I think, 7 a.m. Oh, that's when we're having breakfast anyway, on site at 7:30. And the 10 hours of the challenge probably began in earnest at about midday.
Yeah.
It was a late day.
Yeah.
Because
what time did you? Because I was thrown out at about 10:30. People looked at, let the poor old man go to bed. So what time were you there till? You were there till late.
I was there till midnight, so slightly before Jack. And Dom said, he was like, you have wrapped, you could go to the hotel. And I was like, there is no way I'm leaving. We are so close. I need to see this thing turn on. And then Jack, you were the forced to be there till the bitter end because you did sort of some reviews at the end.
Yeah, my main piece of presenting that was required of me came at around 12:30 a.m. We had this bright idea that, without giving too much away, we thought it'd be fun if I did like a mini car review of these contraptions that they built, as I am known for doing on the YouTube channel, which I did, and it was great. But of course, the problem with that is you have to wait until the things are built, which they weren't until quite late at night. But it was extraordinary. And as someone who, grew up watching that show religiously, it means a lot to me. It means to a lot of people who are there. Making it and seeing how it gets made has not taken away from the magic of it at all, which I think is probably very unusual of a show.
Yeah. I so agree. And I was kind of reflecting at the time, it's so difficult to talk about this without giving any spoilers away. So for anyone listening, sorry, we're speaking in kind of vagaries, but to actually see something physical and mechanical get built, it was just the most extraordinary experience. And actually bizarrely mindful, because whilst we're on site, there is one mission, or rather there are 2 challenges, 2 teams building something. That is all that can be done. That's all that can be focused on. So you're so in it and so present. And I know that sounds really like, oh, so present, but it was just a fantastic day and so lovely to connect these like electrical things to a mechanical product. It was awesome.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was wonderful, wasn't it? And many aspects of it I've sort of stayed with me. I mean, I think for me particularly, it was having Kathy Rogers visit. So Kathy Rogers, who was the originator of the program, I can't remember. We did work out how long ago. It was a long time ago. And I sort of remembered back to the first time I met her and how bonkers the idea seemed. And this will never work. And this is going to be another one of those one-off Channel 4 things that doesn't last and, everyone forgets about. And definitely not that. And she was so thrilled to see we were doing it. I mean, she really was made up by it. So that was very...
It must have been surreal for you, Bobby, because there you were back in that same coat. We had the same directors and soundies as you had 25 years ago. Your son, Louis, who was sort of bouncing around the set as a toddler, there working one of the cameras.
Working
was it
really hard.
Bizarre for you?
Yeah. It kind of was, but it was also... It's so exhausting that I think I was... I remember how exhausted I was, but I was also 20 years younger, so or more than 20 years younger. So that it was, I did find it very tiring to kind of, because you've got to be able to switch on. I mean, you were so good at it, but that thing is, you're sitting, because a lot of it is, there's quite a lot of hanging around for us where we're not doing anything, where all the focus is on the teams and the machines as it should be. And then suddenly it go, can you say something about this? Oh, you have to be kind of ready to jump in.
So I've got a question for you, because on that day, I don't think I've ever been hungrier in my whole entire life. Like by 10 a.m, I'd had 3 croissants. I'd had entire portion of fish and chips by 4 p.m. Had a panini at 9 p.m. Because it was a marathon. Did you always have to eat that much?
Yeah, I mean, we had on-site catering, so a proper catering truck where they cooked hot meals and everything like that. But they had to, the crew was, it was a huge team. It was over 60 people were on the set, so actually there. So they had to cater for over 60 people. So that's quite a big thing. I mean, we did eat a lot, I think. Yeah, I seem to. Yes, I can't quite remember now, but I do remember eating. And someone saying, you really should wash your hands. And I looked at my hands, and they were absolutely filthy. And I hadn't even thought about it. But then everybody else was absolutely filthy. I mean, because you naturally absorb dirt and dust, and that is a relatively clean environment we were in, for this new series. And there's less sort of engine oil and smoke and blatting engines and all that stuff.
But even that had...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you go.
Worth noting that while it was legitimately exhausting for us as presenters, because it's a very long day and you've got to be ready at any moment to be on, we were just commentating on people working hard. Those teams of 3, mind you, I think there were 4 back in the day, but
there
only
would have been
teams
4
of 3,
originally. Yeah,
they were. You could barely tell them apart by the end of the day because they were just a pair of eyes and then grease, a body covered in grease and oil, with sort of lightly singed bits on their T-shirts. Those guys, I think they're probably still asleep, those 2 teams.
They must be, yeah. But I'll tell you the other thing, which a person we haven't mentioned is Colin, who was, an absolute joy, totally, enthusiastic about it. And there was a wonderful moment where I glanced in at the, because I've completely forgotten the names of the teams. The ones that were the first, the
Richard, we don't need to give it away.
Oh
no, we don't need to give it away. No, sorry.
You forgot on one purpose, of the teams, Robert.
But there were 2 people welding and 1 person grinding. And I went, oh my God, I've seen this so many times. And this was in the dark, just noise and sparks and flames and everything. Just chaos. But clearly Colin really enjoyed it, which I was very, it was a great thrill to see him. And he's such an enthusiast and such a knowledgeable guy about that sort of bodging together thing. So it was very
And
useful.
He can really work a telehandler as well. Fair play.
Oh,
yes.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah.
And he was complaining. He said, "Oh, it's really hard to drive." And I went, "You don't make it look like it's hard to drive." God. Yeah.
So, Jack, I don't know if you've had this experience since last week as well, but there was a picture that was put on Instagram, and we were all tagged in it, and so was Colin First. He was also tagged in it, and we were all collaborators on the post as well. And it means that, because he has such an extraordinary high number of followers, but I've had an influx of his followers now follow me. The trouble is that they all have Instagram handles of things like Kevin in the Garage or Stuart Builds stuff. I'm like, oh man, you guys are going to be so disappointed when I blast you with content of my dog and being like, oh, look at this lovely sustainable bottle of wine, la 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 la. So apologies to any of those people out there.
I'm sure they'll love it. It will broaden their worldview.
But I suppose other than Zapheap, we've all been rather busy. Jack, you immediately went from Zapheap straight to another shoot, which I'm not sure how much you'll even be allowed to share about that.
Yeah, I'm potentially about to be the world's worst podcast guest because the thing that I went and filmed straight after Zapheap is even more secret than Zapheap. So I'm going to choose my words very carefully here and tease it. I went somewhere in Europe to visit a certain legacy car maker and take a first look at their new electric vehicle. Can you tell what it is yet?
You've kept it mysterious, mate. Well done.
We're moving on. So this is a car brand that I think it would be fair to say has not been leading the pack in terms of their commitment to electrification and the technology within their electric vehicles. And this car changes that radically. This is a brand that for me has been slightly lagging behind and is potentially now right at the cutting edge in terms of battery technology, in terms of software. It was a remarkable, I've never been quite so astonished on a launch, and I've never had so much information chucked at me, which I've then had to very quickly kind of process, put into my own words, and then deliver to a camera. All while quite tired from being on the Zapheap the day before.
So did you actually do that on Friday, Jack? Was that?
I flew out the following day, so I went on Thursday, filmed on the Friday. I wish I could say more, and I'd like to come back to the pod once that video goes out.
Yeah, we should do
in September, Imogen, I think.
It is. I think it is currently, and I'm actually going to look here because I have it in front of me and I can see the words, and it's so tempting to say them out loud. So 5th of September.
5th of September,
yeah.
But if anyone's willing to guess,
I wish I could say more. I'm sure it's very annoying to listen to, but there's a big video coming early September, and it's worth keeping an eye out for.
But if anyone is willing to guess what we might be referring to, feel free to write in the comments.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We won't.
We can speculate.
We cannot. What's that one? Oh, we cannot confirm or deny.
Rob, what have you been up to?
Well, I have actually been writing the script for the next Everything Electric news, and which just requires a lot of reading and research and checking, because I'm now doing 3 sources of information about any topic, which is really annoying, because about 3 of the topics I really wanted to do, there was no backup, there was no verification. It just sounded like someone's opinion. So I'm trying to avoid people like me, loudmouths opinions, and actually get to some, relatively reliable actual facts. But so I've been very immersed in that, and also helping my daughter move, which is it's more stressful than you might think. Dad, can you carry this? What the hell is that? Here's the thing I've learned about the younger generation. What the beep, beep, beep is a weighted blanket. I had to carry one upstairs. I almost broke my back carrying the damn thing. It's like carrying an elephant. Huge thing.
I did not know where the end of that sentence was going to go. Weighted blanket was not what I guessed.
Oh, right. I've become obsessed with weighted blankets. I know they're very good and very reassuring or something, but I don't know. Yeah, they're heavy.
It's supposed to be very calming. It kind of presses down on you in a reassuring way. I feel like I would feel trapped.
Yeah, I haven't had a go with it. I've got to have a go with it.
I suppose it's the adult version of, being tucked in when you're a child.
Yes, yes, that's true. And when my lovely daughter was a tiny child, she always made me tuck her in. My son didn't want any tucking or anything anywhere near it, and she liked to be tucked in. I shouldn't be talking about her now. She'd be very upset.
But she will be living with you for a few months, which is always
for a few weeks while they're between houses. Yes, so it's all, and there's a lot of logistics. It's wonderful, and I really tried to get them to use an electric van, and that didn't happen. They've basically got there's 2 men about to arrive with another van load of stuff. So that's all. So that's that's so off topic.
A little insight into the rock and roll champagne lifestyle of Robert Llewellyn.
So not.
Imogen,
I've also been clearing up I've been clearing up all the clippings that my wife has done in the garden. So she says she's done the job. This is something that has been weighing on me like a weighted blanket. So doing the job that I see, clearing out a bit of the corner of the garden, involves getting all the stuff you've clipped off or dug up or whatever and putting it in the recycling vegetable bin thing we've got. No, you leave it on the floor and then your husband goes and has to pick it all up. So there's been a bit of stress.
Like a perfect partnership there,
But she says, I've done all the work. And I go, well, you haven't done all the work. Done some of it. Anyway, that's enough. That's enough ranting about that.
Imogen, what's been keeping you busy?
Ooh, what has been keeping me busy? Well, there's been quite a lot of exciting things recently, I suppose. Last week, we were at Goodwood Festival of Speed, which was very hot. Very, very, very hot. And sort of always interesting to see what electric stuff people are bringing out. We've got an episode going out tomorrow that it will be in the past. It will be tomorrow for us, but last week for anyone listening to this, that you shot. And then a lot of my time has been spent either doing podcasts or scripting stuff for Canada, because we're starting to shift our content strategy towards North America stuff. So next week I'll be going out to Canada, having a look at some stuff to do with hydroelectric dams, some lithium processing technology, which is really, really interesting. More on that once I've got a little bit more into the weeds on the detail. Some electric boats, also this huge industrial farm, which is totally powered by renewable energy. So very much been in the clean energy camp, more so than the electric vehicle camp of late, I would say. But a couple of highlights, I sat down with Ed Miliband recently, and then followed that up with Chris Stark as well, who's head of Clean Power Mission 2030. So yeah, it's been busy, but it's always busy here at Everything Electric Show.
You never stop. Well, also I should mention lovely Michael Hurwitz. So that's just gone out today at our time. Like we're in a different continent. But so it will be last week's podcast. But if you haven't heard it, it's really worth, because he just is such an absolute mine of information about how the transport system in London has really been changed very dramatically in the last 10 years, with the electrification of a lot of the transport, so the buses and the taxis and many of the delivery vans and now the cars. And it is cleaner. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but my goodness, it doesn't smell as basically as toxic as it used to. 20 years ago was really bad. You would I think you only noticed it if you didn't live in London. Many times I caught the train, I get out the train at Paddington, walk up onto Praed Street and go, oh my God, it's really, really, you really notice it when you don't live there. When I lived there for 14 years, I don't remember noticing it at all, except when I blew my nose. I won't go into any detail, but you did know that if you cycled across London, then blew your nose, I
was going to say, I think the blowing the nose thing, that's something that even in Jack and I think in our recent history, we can remember sort of 7 years ago, you blew your nose after being in London, and it was not a pretty sight. And now it's a little bit more pretty. But
I would just like to go on record and say I have never blown my nose and looked into the tissue and been like, well, I must have been in London today. Do you guys really, I'm not really analysing my bogies all that much at all, guys. I'll be completely honest with you.
Gee, that is a man. Either you have a much better personal hygiene than myself and Robert, or you are London born and bred. So perhaps
that's what it is. Yeah, no, it is just two streams of lava, but I assume that's normal because that's what it's always been for me.
But Michael is such an interesting character for two reasons. Yeah, he's absolutely incredible. He has been so instrumental in this clean transport journey across London. A career spanning sort of 20 years. He became like the most senior civil servant that you could possibly be when it comes to the government and clean energy and transport. And I remember the first time I met him, which was about 5 years ago. He was giving me a bit of a whistle-stop tour of his career and some of the things he'd done at Transport for London, some of the stuff he'd done for the Department of Transport, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, all right. There's no way that this guy has done it, because he's like 28 years old and he's just like a little bit of a slightly arrogant graduate, I'm going to say.
Yes.
And then I was like, hang on a second. You just physically couldn't have squeezed all of this into your, 4-year career that you've had so far. Turns out he's like much older than 28, but he just looks fantastic. So clearly there is something
really,
energizing.
Really unfair. It's very, very unfair. It's I would say it's cruel how much hair he's got and how dark it is when you compare it with his age. That's just not fair. That's left the rest of the white male race just reeling in depression and self-loathing, particularly me.
Well, the other thing is that he was very instrumental in setting up the original Office for Zero Emission Vehicles and the grants that existed, I guess about 7 to 10 years ago now.
Yes.
Which means that it's particularly interesting having this conversation now, because as of last week, there's been the announcement of the new electric vehicle grant of £3,750 for cars that fit the criteria that are under £37,000. And we've all kind of been observing the commentary around that news. What are your thoughts?
I'll do very briefly. I think it's not bad. It makes me, there is a side of it that always makes me slightly worried, and did before, in the sense that, it's such an easy target for people who are opposed to any change in transport policy, in that, they're so rubbish, you have to give people money to buy them. The government has to, and that. So, in a sense, I want any technology you buy to be worth it, because it's better and it's cheaper to live with and run, and I want it to stand up on its own 2 feet. So and it has been interesting that since the original grant has disappeared, which is, I don't know, not that long ago, 3 or 4 years ago,
something like
when
that.
the old grant stopped, the sales of electric vehicles have just continued to rise. So it didn't if they just immediately dropped off a cliff and no one was buying electric cars, then we've got a massive problem. But I think it does send a message, though, that the government are serious about this transition. And I think one of the aspects that I thought it was a shame that in the timing, so it's nothing to do with the grant, but they've actually allocated £63 million funding for on-street and off-street charging. So to support the charging network, which is now, all the complaints I hear from people, they're not about the cost of the cars. They're not about the reliability of the cars or the batteries. It's always, everyone talks about the charging. Oh, I'd love to use an electric car, but there's no charging infrastructure. And, you bite your knuckle again. Well, there are, 83,000 rapid chargers in the country, and there's about 1,000 being put in every week. And they are, there is a charging infrastructure. But if you don't use it, you don't rely on it, you don't see it. It's very easy to ignore it. But so, I mean, I guess I'm a bit torn, but not newly torn. I was already torn with the old grant as well. But I do think I'm like 60% in favour of it and think it's really good. So my reservations are in the minority.
And the charging thing is really interesting, because I was listening to Jeremy Vine on Radio 2 when the announcement was made, and I really, really cannot abide that show most of the time, because I just find it incredible that they'll be like, salt gritters up and down the country are causing outrage, and it'll be this sort of they'll sensationalize any topic basically, and I think they were looking to really sensationalize this particular topic, and lots of people were ringing and saying, I love my EV, I will never go back, right, it's great,
okay,
but the charging infrastructure is a challenge. And then there are a couple of people who were slightly more negative towards electric vehicles or electric vehicle transportation. And they were like, my electric vehicle is great, but I had these 2 terrible experiences of the charging network, and I will never buy an electric vehicle again. So exactly as you described, so interesting that the gripes on both sides of the spectrum, for EVs and against EVs, came down to this perception of the charging infrastructure, which is something, until you live with an EV, you can't. You can't. Really.
Yeah.
And especially because the way that people travel and where they go is so different. So your experience of the charging infrastructure is so unique to you, your household, your job, the way you live your life. So it's difficult or it's just not reflective talking about it in these like huge sweeping terms.
Yes, it is hard. Well, I mean, also the three of us are a kind of interesting example. I do have room, off the street to park a car and plug it in. I have all those advantages, and both of you drive electric cars, and you don't. You have to use the public charging. So what I would imagine is my fuel costs are. It's the absolute opposite of virtue signaling. I drive around shame signaling. I'm going, I feel really bad. I've just driven 200 miles and the fuel cost was zero because it was all from my solar panels, so it's so unfair. And that is a really new twist. It has something to do with income and with wealth because, you've got to have a house with a garage or a house with a driveway to do that. And then you've got to have solar panels and then, to take full advantage of that. But
Jack,
yeah, I mean, how on earth do you manage? It's impossible to have an electric car and not have a driveway.
Well, it's not impossible. I'm very lucky that the charger that matters the most is the one at home. And at home might mean on your driveway if you're lucky, or it might mean the charger nearest to your home. In my case, fortunately, on my street that I plug my car into overnight and grab it in the morning and unplug it. So I kind of get the experience of having my own driveway charger. The problem is it's way more expensive because I pay tax on my charging and you, Robert, don't. And as we all know, there is actually a bill passing through less tax.
Yes, less tax. Yeah.
This is currently being discussed in Parliament, isn't there? There is a bill to slash the tax on public charging, which I would argue is as instrumental, if not more instrumental, in enabling electric vehicles in a big way, because then there is no if, buts, or maybes around it being much charger to run an electric car, because the charging would just be so much more affordable for everyone if they slash that tax on public charging. In regards to
make it clear it clear for people overseas who may not know, when you're any household pays it's VAT, it's called value added tax, which is on many products and goods that you buy in this country. But at home, when you buy electricity, you pay 5% VAT on top of your bill, and when you plug into a public charger, you're paying 20%. So it's a big difference. It makes a big difference. If it was 5% for public chargers, it would be really a lot cheaper.
But the challenge that it comes with all of that is that I think I'm right in saying, and if I am incorrect, then someone in the comments, please do feel free to correct me. But in this discussion that's going through Parliament at the moment about reforming the tax structure, it's not necessarily bring public charging down to 5% to match home charging.
Right.
There's speculation that actually it's just made the same. So actually there could be a scenario where it's 20% VAT on home electric charging.
Wow.
Which then there's all this complicated stuff around, well, if you've been generating your own power on your own solar panels, do you really mean to suggest that you're being charged tax on stuff that you're generating?
So what they're suggesting is that only the electricity that goes into your car, you have to pay 20%. The electricity that runs your lights is still 5%. How the technological and bureaucratic complexity of separating those two it's
nonsense. It's like total faff.
I mean, if that was the case here at my house, the first thing I do is run my extension cable out of the kitchen where I plug the kettle in,
charge a large external power bank, and then run the car off that. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway,
it's so silly. And if ever you ask a politician about the 20% VAT thing versus the 5% VAT thing, they're like, "Oh, well, you'll have to ask the tax office because we don't know." And I'm like, "Oh God, it's so." And it just kind of points to the fact that there's lots of. I really believe that there are so many people who have opinions about this or are forming policy about these sorts of things who haven't actually lived with the technology and experienced it. Because when it goes right, when you have your sort of setup of either, if you have home charging, dreamy, because you're paying basically nothing with those really lovely tariffs that you can get through OVO and Octopus and the likes of that. Or you do figure out how it works for you without a home charger, and you do experience like a better overall experience. And it is slightly more comparable with the cost of petrol and diesel if you don't find destination charging, but it is generally speaking much more seamless. And like for me, I don't have a home charger, which is kind of annoying. I wish we did. But either we live, 10 minutes from a rapid charger, or I go to the gym where there is free charging. And that is a good incentive to go to the gym.
I'll just do another hour on the treadmill.
Genuinely,
another 40 miles.
And by the way, why have more businesses not realised that it's a fantastic way to get people through the door and staying for longer?
Yeah.
Literally, because today at the gym, I wouldn't have gone to the gym if I didn't need to charge. And the reason I need to charge is because I'm taking my nephew to Legoland on Wednesday. Need to get there. Very important auntie duties. But I know that it's an 11 kilowatt charger, which is pretty good. So I'm going to have to gym for a bit, and then I'm probably going to have to be there for a little bit more time. I will buy a coffee or whatever. Yeah. So, there's ways to reconsider that dwell time and the opportunity I think that presents.
Yeah,
definitely. Back to the grant very quickly. I would agree with Bobby in that it's most definitely better than having no incentives. Having incentives is better than no incentives. I do understand, Robert, your point about the sort of perception issues around, we have to make this cheaper. But I wouldn't worry too much about that, because as we've seen from countries like Norway, where they're very good at electric cars and everyone drives them, the way you get people into them is almost immaterial. It's just about getting people into them. All the surveys that we've conducted prove that once people go electric, they do not go back. It's just about getting them into those electric cars initially. So I think anything we can do to incentivize that is beneficial. My issue with it is that it's confusing and convoluted. There are many caveats. And it's not as simple as all cars under this price get this much of a discount. It's about how sustainably they were built, how sustainably the battery was made. And that sounds worthy, but there's a lot of problems with that. Number one being, almost all batteries are made in China, and I think that disqualifies cars from a certain amount of the discount. So we now have this situation where no one knows how discounted cars are going to be.
Any
and
one
which
car
cars
is.
qualify. I've been Googling this morning looking for some article from one of the big automotive outlets saying, here are the cars that qualify and here's how much. But no one knows.
They don't know.
I think a bigger, more valid issue we have right now in terms of getting people to go electric, a more valid issue than price, a more valid issue than charging infrastructure, is confusion. Anxiety about it being a bit daunting and confusing remains a valid anxiety about going electric, because people are talking about kilowatt hours and kilowatts. What the hell are those? They're different things. And we've just added more complexity with this grant that is massively varied in terms of which car and which brand. So I'm a bit frustrated by that. I hope that will become clearer over the coming weeks, because there is a lot of uproar about how confusing it is. My hope is that the government will now clarify, and before long we will have just a shopping list. Here are the cars that qualify for the grant.
Yes.
Here's how much you get off them, because that's what we need for this to be useful, right?
Yeah.
That I think that's such a valid point. And actually, Ginny Buckley, who runs electrifying.com, said something along the lines of, like, if you have this grant that doesn't just sort of blanket apply to all vehicles under £37,000, you're actually reducing the competition and the perceived choice, which then, of course, has its own problems as well.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, and also the confusion. And this has been really interesting for me on a personal level, because my dad, he's a proper eco warrior. He, his house is pretty much off grid. He, has like 30-second showers in the spirit of saving water, that kind of thing. But his car is the last thing that he's gone to change.
Right.
And he is like a super smart human being. And yet he's like, honestly, Imogen, can you just tell me which one? I need to get a bike on the back. That is pretty much my only criteria. And I think that's an insight of someone who's not in the weeds on this, like we all are. Yeah. It's like, oh, for God's sake, there's just like all of this information to navigate, and I can't really be bothered. Yes. So I think, the confusion is it's really interesting. And I think many people out there would argue, should we just be putting that effort towards what's happening in the secondhand market, where, of course, like I think 7 out of 8 car purchases are made, or 6 out of 7, I forget the exact number, especially here in the UK, and the charging question, which remains a challenge perceived or otherwise.
Idea that's being floated that actually investment would be better spent in some sort of grants around used electric vehicles. I can't quite get my head around how that would work. Do you think that would be a better model, given that that's what people are mostly buying?
I mean, I think it probably would. I mean, that would, because that you could see then substantially lowered cost. Like you could even get to sub £10,000 for a second-hand vehicle that's perfectly good and it's in good condition. I mean, I think it generates, any of those sort of government ideas just generate bureaucracy that is by definition confusing, and that's the problem with it, I suppose. But I mean, in a sense, I would be much more enthusiastic about secondhand ones, because new cars are generally bought by big leasing companies, and that's I mean, I lease my car because I never went in a new car until I was in my mid-50s. So who could buy a new car? I mean, I didn't know anyone who could buy a new car. I never met anyone who would go into a showroom and buy a new car. It was just unheard of. Everyone had second, third, fourth hand cars. That was just normal.
I suppose what the legacy car makers would jump to say in response to that is like, we are hurting enough right now without
already
further decentivizing buying new cars. And I think this is as much about helping the OEMs as anything else, isn't it?
Very
they
much,
are all, even ones who are trying in earnest, like the Vauxhall managing director for the UK has posted this thing on LinkedIn, kind of going, look, we've done everything. We've electrified every model in our lineup. We have electric versions of cars that are cheaper than the petrol version of the same car, and we're way off targets. We're way off targets for net zero, and we're facing a £1.5 billion fine this year. We need a leg up. So maybe we're thinking about it wrong. Maybe this is as much about helping the OEMs get through this tricky, sticky transition as it is about getting more people into electric cars quickly.
And I think the thing we have to remember, like, Jack, the reason you and I drive electric cars is because we're fortunate enough to have a salary sacrifice scheme at work. That is what enables us to do it. If we did not have that, we would be desperately waiting for the price to come down and down and down and down, such that probably a secondhand EV would be feasible, or that the grants are available on slightly cheaper models. The dog is normally really still, but she has started
I was wondering what that was.
There's a little
having a little paddle around.
She needs to get her nails clipped tomorrow, so she'll be less noisy next time. But I think the thing we have to remember in all of this, so we have the salary sacrifice. That is a level of like privilege that we experience. There are lots of people out there, Robert, I'm going to put you in this camp, who have off-road. You have a driveway, you can charge at home. Going electric just makes so much sense because it's like the more affordable option sort of long term. But there are many people for whom A, no salary sacrifice, B, no driveway. And we do need to lower the barrier such that electric vehicles are more accessible, and that whatever mechanism we choose to get there is a good thing.
Yeah. I firmly believe we will get there because it's such a big global movement. There's going to be countries where it's slower, and there's going to be places where it's not, it's harder to do the charging. All those things are all real concerns and real challenges, but I think it will happen. And I think one of the things that I think is very hopeful, it's one of the stories I covered in the news, which is, a random Volkswagen ID3 had its battery tested after 107,000 miles, and it had dropped 8 miles. It had lost 8 miles of range in that time. Well, the range is 250 miles. So, it's not really made a big difference, which means you can buy a car that's, I think, I'll step back because this is the bit I cut from the news, but I went on a huge rant about how much it cost me to have old cars that I bought for £400, as a third or fourth hand rusting Golf. I would spend thousands of pounds in the next 3 years keeping that car going because it was constantly breaking down. It would blow gaskets, the exhaust manifold would come off, the carburetor would get stuck, the fuel lines would be blocked, the brakes wouldn't work, everything went wrong with them because they were old cars. Well, it's quite possible that in, say, 20 years' time, you buy an old second-hand electric car, it might get punctures, it might need the steering realigning, it might need some work on the brakes or suspension, but it's just not going to cost as much to keep that going. So the long term, I think, is hopeful. The short term is painful. But the other quick thing I want to say is the government figures are, I think it's actually slightly under 60% of UK households have somewhere off the street to park a car. Probably 5% of those people, of those households, currently have an electric car, if that, probably even less. I.e., there's a massive wodge of the human race in this country that could take huge advantage from having electric cars, and then they would then therefore produce second-hand and third-hand ones, and they'd hand them to their kids or whatever the system is. And so, I think there should be focus on the people who, like yourselves, who can't charge at home. But I think there should be some pressure, could be moral, on the millions of people in this country who will still have a diesel SUV parked in front of their house off the street, which they then have to get in, start it up, drive down the road to fill it up with toxic imported fossil fuel. Sorry, I won't rant anymore.
Yeah, if you have your own driveway and you do not have a lifestyle that requires that you drive hundreds of miles in all different directions every week, what are you doing? Not getting an electric car at this point? That's bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Especially, what is the tariff? Like 7p per kilowatt hour or something like that? It's like, it's so...
At night, yeah.
Yeah. And if we take I'm going to do some live maths here, not in my head. I am using a calculator. But let's say the average battery size is about 60 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
So, and you never really go 0 to 100%.
You never fill it. So, yes, you could say 45 kilowatt hours is your top up overnight.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking like £3 to £4.20 for 270 miles of range. I mean, it's just, it's hard to argue with. I had an interesting point. It probably wasn't interesting at all. So I won't mention it. But I am aware that we are coming towards 40 minutes of rabbiting on.
Oh, there's so much more rabbiting to do.
So much more rabbiting. And I'm so grateful that we have all of Zapheap episode 2 pilot to catch up in more detail as well. Because we definitely get the easiest ride compared to the teams, all of the camera crew. We get a lovely time. Eat snacks.
No, it's wonderful. It's lovely. And I think it's very exciting as well. We don't need to go into details about the teams this week, but just to very briefly explain, the teams we had last week are very experienced in terms of putting electric motors in and batteries in things. Let's leave it there. Whereas the teams that are coming this week They might know what a battery and an electric motor is. They might know a great deal about them on a very academic level, but they haven't actually possibly done quite what they've got facing them.
And also the teams from last week, they're all colleagues to each other. The teams this week are slightly more hodgepodge collection of people.
Yes.
One of them is actually, I know quite well. We're married. He's been recruited. So I'm quite looking forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm planning on sewing a subplot into this episode across the day. I'm going to do little bits to camera. One of these engineers is married to one of us presenters. But whom and to whom?
Yeah.
It's Robert and that big Yorkshire bloke with greasy thumbs over there. They've been in love for years.
Do you know, actually, there are 2 people married to each other who are going to be on site.
Oh.
On set. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So the plot thickens. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, right. Don't tell us who. We'll see if we can work it out.
A subplot emerges.
But aside from Zapheap, what are you looking forward to in the next couple of weeks? What have we got on? Oh, I
know. Yeah. I think you're about to say the same thing. Go on.
You guys have an extremely exciting shoot next week.
Oh yes, we do
have a good shoot. Next week.
I still haven't heard, Jack, but I will remind them. So we're trying. There's a particular vehicle we're trying to get slightly earlier than it was offered to us, so that we've got the only day we can film it. We can do what we're planning to do. No, I'm very excited about that.
This is the world's worst podcast because we're just talking about lots of things that we're not allowed to talk about. But we'll again tease it, and we'll say this: Robert has a very special, extremely high-end new electric car. And we're going to put it up against an old car that's been turned electric and ask the question, if you're well off,
very
and you want
wealthy,
a special car for 6 figures that's electric, do you go shiny and new, or do you electrify something classic and old? And it's going to be, I'm looking forward to that.
The only little addendum I want to put to that is it's not my car. I haven't bought the most expensive. It's a press loan.
And this is the thing, because we're so aware that when things creep over a certain price point, there's a very small minority of our audience who will ever legitimately consider those vehicles.
Yeah.
Although for any of the PRs listening to this, please continue to give us those cars. Anyway, and so we know that we need to do something a little bit more exciting and fun with those episodes. So that I think it's going to be quite silly. It'll be fun.
Actually, the other thing quickly, while I remember, and this is in a sense relating to expensive electric vehicles, I have now seen 2 JLR heavily camouflaged vehicles, definitely both electric. The one was the Jaguar, so it was so obvious it was the Jaguar because the shape of that, even though they did stuff over the bump, it was basically a bonnet came around the corner, and about 10 minutes later, it was followed by a windscreen. And it was towing a huge trailer, a heavily laden trailer, up a hill, I would say at or slightly above the speed limit. It was really pelting up the hill, which is interesting.
A tasty scoop, because the Jaguar have a facility very near where you live in the Cotswolds, don't they, Bob?
So I'm not far from there.
That is interesting to note, that whatever pre-production car they are working on sufficiently resembles that bonkers concept that you can recognise it.
Because I think it is hard to say. It was coming the other way. It was very wide, very long, and very low. That's all I can say, because it was very heavily covered. It had some weird lumps on the roof that won't be on it. But then the other one I saw on Friday, there's no question it was a Range Rover.
Wow.
But it was and I was in static traffic and it went the other way. I was in a queue and it went past. So it may have been a new hybrid version. I don't know, but it looked like the electric one, and it was covered in the weird camouflagey stuff.
So,
but I've just heard that they've delayed the release of it till next year. The electric Range Rover.
I was going to say hot off the press, but actually it's not that hot. It's more like lukewarm off the press. Yeah, they're delaying it by all accounts, and I mean that's a sadness, and it's also not totally surprising. But interestingly, because we had Rawdon Glover from Jaguar on the podcast the other day.
Yes.
And I was like, how closely will the real car resemble the Type 00 concept that we've all seen? He was like...
Because it was at Goodwood, wasn't it? It was
yeah. And he was like, it should be really, really similar, with the exception that it's 4 doors rather than 2 doors. And I was like, really? It's going to be that long here in the UK? And I was like, surely it won't be available on the, exec company car scheme. And he's like, I think it will be. So
I think it's made for it, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that thing is...
the bonnet is comically long, isn't it? I mean, it's like Cruella de Vil. It's that sort of...
yeah, and also just cartoon. Like nothing... Like, there's not really going to be that much functional stuff in there. It is an aesthetic choice rather than an engineering one. But I mean,
presumably you could put a 250 kilowatt hour battery, in physical size, it would easily, from what I can judge of the size of the damn thing. But I mean, that would weigh.
I wonder if it might be
tons.
sort of quote unquote front engined.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, either that or it's got the most monumental frunk in the whole entire world, and you could have moved your daughter back to your house in it. So
I could have done, yes. I look forward to taking the weighted blanket back to Bristol. It will need that might have been what they were testing. I reckon that Jaguar were testing towing a trailer with a weighted blanket in it.
Oh man!
But no, what was impressive with that was I was behind a truck going down a hill, and that's a hill I've seen many Jaguars and Land Rovers with camouflage over the last 30 years. That's one of their obviously their favoured routes. Mm-hmm. But it came the other way because I was going quite slow. It came the other way at speed, and I could see it coming around this corner. It's going, oh my god, that's that thing! I think it's got a trailer. Whoa! And it went past me. So. It's got some oomph, whatever else it's got. Anyway.
Well, I think, for today, we've shared some pearls of sort of wisdom and some pearls of less wisdom, but done some chatting, which is good. But that probably is all that we have time for.
Maybe we should. Yes.
So as we wrap up, I guess anyone who's listening, if you could like, comment, subscribe, all of the stuff, share with a friend. It's always appreciated. It's always really handy. Any other final thoughts?
Come to Farnborough, see the contraptions do battle in October on those dates that I definitely have memorized.
11th and 12th. 11th and 12th of October.
12th of October. That is definitely that is a must do if you're in the UK, anywhere south of Aberdeen. It's worth the trip.
And if you're in Aberdeen, stay away. You stay up there. You're not welcome.
No, you can come.
You know how Bobby feels about Northern Scottish.
Everyone would be very welcome. It is a long way from Aberdeen, as it's fair to say. But it will be. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, because we'll be doing the actual competitions between the contraptions live at our Farnborough live show. And that is such a scoop for anyone who is planning on attending. It'll be really fun. So, but that's it. Do you want to do the thing? If you have been.
Oh, shall I do that? Okay, yes.
Yeah,
you've done the. I can try and do that. You've done the subscribe thing. I always want to say, tell your pals and your friends and your uncle who's annoying, and anyone else that you love about the Everything Electric podcast.
Mm. Yeah, there we go.
And that's it. If you have been, as always, thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.